This might be the moment everything went too far. Because what just came out of 50 Cent's documentary isn't just trending. It's making people uncomfortable. And at the center of it all is a reaction people are calling real, raw, and possibly never meant to be seen. This might be one of the most emotionally charged celebrity moments the internet has seen in a long time. Because what's coming out of 50 Cent's documentary right now isn't just creating headlines, it's creating shockwaves. And at the center of those shockwaves, according to viral online reactions and unverified insider claims, is T.I.'s wife, who is being pulled into a storm she never publicly asked to be part of. Reports circulating across social media suggest that newly surfaced footage, material that was never widely expected to reach the public in this form, has triggered an emotional reaction so intense that some are describing it as overwhelming, even breaking point-level distress. But here's where things immediately get more complicated. Because this isn't being treated as random or accidental content, the way people are talking about it online suggests something more intentional, more structured, something that feels carefully placed inside a larger narrative. And when 50 Cent is involved, people don't see things as random anymore. They see strategy. They see timing. They see intent. So the question that keeps coming up everywhere isn't just what was shown, it's why now? Why release something like this at this moment, when tensions are already high and public attention is locked in? Within hours of the footage circulating, social platforms exploded. Reactions poured in from every direction: fans, critics, commentators, and even industry voices who normally avoid public drama. And almost immediately, one narrative began to dominate. According to viral posts and unverified reports, T.I.'s wife was seen or said to be in a highly emotional state after the footage surfaced, reportedly shaken, overwhelmed, and struggling to process what had just become public. Whether every detail of that is accurate or not, the impact of the story itself is undeniable, because the perception alone has shifted the entire conversation. This is no longer just about a documentary. It's about privacy. It's about control. And it's about what happens when personal history collides with public entertainment. To understand why this moment is hitting so hard, you have to zoom out. T.I. and his wife have spent years living under public attention. From the outside, they've often appeared unified, presenting a strong image of stability, loyalty, and resilience despite constant scrutiny. But like many public figures, their relationship has also been surrounded by speculation, rumors, and moments of controversy that never fully disappeared from online memory. And that matters right now. Because when new visual material enters the picture, it doesn't exist in isolation. It gets connected to everything people already think they know. Old conversations resurface. Old debates restart. Old assumptions come back louder than before. And suddenly, a single clip becomes part of a much bigger story the internet has been building for years. Now add 50 Cent into that equation. He's not just another media figure in this situation. His name alone changes how people interpret the content. Whether people agree with him or not, he's known for presenting narratives that feel raw, unfiltered, and intentionally uncomfortable. So when it was revealed that this documentary includes material connected to T.I. and his personal life, expectations were already high and tense. But what people say they saw wasn't just commentary or secondhand storytelling. According to online reactions, the footage feels direct, visual, emotional, the kind of content that doesn't just describe a moment, it forces you to sit inside it. And that's where everything starts to shift. Because once footage becomes visual proof, even in fragments, the conversation stops being hypothetical. It stops being what if. and becomes, what exactly are we seeing? As clips began circulating, viewers didn't just watch once. They replayed. They slowed things down. They analyzed facial expressions, timing, context, tone. And at the center of that analysis was T.I.'s wife. According to online discussion, her emotional response isn't just being interpreted as a reaction to the footage itself, but to what the footage represents. And that's an important distinction, because sometimes the real impact isn't the content itself. It's what the content unlocks emotionally. Memories, context, private moments, personal history that was never meant to be public conversation. Now imagine that not staying private. Imagine it being discussed, clipped, reposted, and analyzed by millions of strangers who don't know the full story, but feel entitled to interpret it anyway. That kind of exposure doesn't just create discomfort. It creates overload. And that's why so many people are reacting strongly to the alleged emotional response being circulated online. They see it not as celebrity drama, but as a human moment under extreme public pressure. But while the emotional side is dominating conversations, another layer is quietal. Why building underneath it? Because every time new footage drops, the internet does something predictable. It connects dots. Old rumors get revived. Past interviews get rewatched. Previously dismissed controversies get reevaluated in a new light. And suddenly, the narrative expands far beyond what was originally shown. That's where things start getting messy. Because once public interpretation begins filling in gaps, truth and speculation start blending together in ways that are hard to separate. Meanwhile, T.I. himself remains at the center of attention, even without directly responding to what's unfolding. And that silence is becoming part of the story too. In the absence of clear explanation, people begin reading meaning into everything, or nothing at all. And in situations like this, silence is never neutral. It gets interpreted as strategy, denial, or anticipation depending on who is watching. At the same time, pressure from all sides continues to build. Fans are divided. Commentators are split. Industry voices are weighing in cautiously or aggressively, depending on their stance. Some argue this is exposure, truth being revealed without filters. Others argue it crosses a boundary, turning private life into public consumption for entertainment purposes. And neither side is backing down. Because this isn't just a disagreement anymore. It's a cultural split over what should and shouldn't be shared. What counts as truth? And what counts as intrusion? And while that debate continues publicly, the emotional narrative keeps pulling focus back to one core idea: the human cost of visibility. Because regardless of interpretation, one thing is clear: when deeply personal material enters mass circulation, the effects don't stay online. They follow people offline too. They affect relationships. They affect reputations. They affect how people see themselves and how others see them. And that's what makes this moment feel different from standard celebrity controversy. It doesn't feel like entertainment anymore. It feels like exposure with consequences. Now, as the footage continues spreading and interpretations multiply, one question is dominating every platform. Is there more? Because according to ongoing online speculation, what has been released so far might only be part of a larger body of material. Some believe there are additional scenes, additional context, or extended versions still unreleased. If true, that raises an even bigger question. What happens when the rest comes out? Will it clarify the story? Or will it intensify everything even further? Because if this much reaction came from what people have already seen, then anything additional doesn't just add context. It has the potential to completely reshape the narrative again. And that's why this situation feels like it's still unfolding in real time. Not resolved, not finalized, just expanding. And at the center of it all remains the same tension that started this entire wave. Where is the line between telling a story and crossing into someone's personal life? And who gets to decide that line in a world where everything can be recorded, edited, and shared instantly? For now, there are no clear answers. Only reactions, only speculation, and a growing sense that whatever happens next will matter even more than what's already been released. Because this story doesn't feel like it's ending. It feels like it's building toward something else entirely. And then something shifted. Because at that point, the conversation stopped being just about what was inside the documentary. It became about what it meant. At first, people were locked in on the footage itself, rewatching clips, slowing them down, zooming in on expressions, trying to decode every second like it held a hidden answer. But the more it spread, the more the interpretation started to take over the actual content. And that's where things changed. Because once a clip stops being seen as just a moment and starts being treated like evidence, the entire narrative begins to mutate in real time. People aren't just reacting anymore. They're building theories on top of theories, filling in gaps with assumptions, and connecting dots that may or may not actually be connected. And suddenly, this isn't just a documentary anymore. It's a debate about reality itself. On one side, viewers are saying the footage feels revealing, like something long hidden is finally being brought into the open. They argue that uncomfortable truth doesn't become less true just because it's difficult to watch. In their eyes, this is what exposure looks like, unfiltered, raw, and unpolished. But on the other side, the reaction is completely different. People are saying this doesn't feel like truth being revealed. It feels like moments being framed, edited, arranged in a way that pushes emotion in a specific direction. And once that idea enters the conversation, everything becomes questionable. Because now viewers aren't just asking, what happened? They're asking, why was it shown like this? And that question changes everything. Meanwhile, as the debate grows louder online, the emotional weight of the situation keeps building underneath it. Because at the center of all this discussion are real people, not characters, not headlines, not viral clips. And according to circulating reactions, that reality hit especially hard when it came to T.I.'s wife. Reports and online claims suggest her response wasn't just sadness or frustration. It was overwhelming emotional distress triggered by the sudden visibility of deeply personal material. Not in a public statement, not in an interview, but in private, behind closed doors, away from cameras, away from commentary. Just a human reaction to something deeply personal being turned into global conversation. And that's the part people keep coming back to. Because no matter what side of the debate someone is on, it becomes harder to ignore the emotional cost of what's happening. One moment, a private memory. The next moment, a viral topic. And once that shift happens, there's no undoing it. But just as the emotional reaction began dominating the conversation, another layer started forming underneath it, one that made everything even more complicated. Because now people aren't just questioning the footage itself. They're questioning how it was assembled. Some viewers began pointing out what they believe are inconsistencies, moments where clips feel abruptly cut, scenes that seem to jump in time, or reactions that appear to start in the middle rather than the beginning. And whether those observations are accurate or not, the effect is the same. Doubt spreads. And once doubt enters a viral situation, it doesn't stay contained. It multiplies. Now the conversation has split into three competing narratives. One group believes this is authentic exposure, painful, yes, but real. Another believes it's selective storytelling, real moments, but arranged in a way that shapes perception rather than simply presenting facts. And a third group doesn't fully commit to either side. They just feel uncomfortable watching private life unfold in public at all. And that discomfort is growing. Because the deeper the internet goes, the more it feels like there is no clear boundary anymore between documentation and intrusion, between storytelling and exposure, between public interest and private life. And right in the middle of all of it is T.I., whose silence has now become its own part of the narrative. Because when someone at the center of a storm doesn't respond, the internet doesn't interpret it as neutrality. It interprets it as meaning. Some say the silence suggests strategy, waiting for the right moment, controlling timing, avoiding escalation. Others say it suggests pressure, an attempt to avoid making a volatile situation worse. And others see it as something more uncertain, a sign that there may not be an easy response at all. But regardless of interpretation, one thing is clear: the absence of a direct explanation has only made the situation louder. Because in moments like this, silence doesn't stop speculation. It fuels it. And while public debate continues to intensify, behind the scenes rumors are adding even more weight to the situation. There are claims, unverified but widely circulated, that suggest some level of awareness existed before the footage became public. That certain people may have known material like this existed, even if they didn't expect it to surface in this way. And if even partially true, that detail changes how people view everything that came after. Because it introduces intent, preparation, foreknowledge, and suddenly the story is no longer just about what was shown. It becomes about what was known before it was shown. That shift is why the conversation has become so unstable. Every new claim adds another layer. Every new interpretation rewrites the last one. And every new clip, no matter how small, has the potential to reset the entire narrative again. But perhaps the most important development is still unfolding quietly underneath all the noise. The possibility that what has been released so far may not be the complete picture. Rumors continue to circulate suggesting there may be additional footage, longer versions, unseen segments, or context that hasn't yet been made public. And that possibility alone is enough to keep the entire situation in motion. Because if there is more, then everything currently being debated could shift again. Opinions could flip. Interpretations could collapse. And what people believe they understand today might not survive tomorrow's release. And that uncertainty is exactly what makes this moment feel so unstable. Not just the footage itself, not just the reactions, but the fact that the full story, whatever it actually is, still hasn't fully revealed itself. So now the situation exists in a strange space. Part public reaction, part private fallout, part unfolding narrative. And as long as there are unanswered questions, missing context, and unconfirmed claims, the conversation isn't going to settle. It's going to keep evolving. Because right now, the most powerful force in this entire situation is what's already been shown. It's what people believe is still coming next. And breakdowns, opinions, counter-opinions, everything hitting at once like a digital wildfire that refused to slow down. At first, people thought it was just another viral moment, another documentary clip designed to spark conversation and fade within a day or two. But this time, it didn't fade. It multiplied. Every new upload created 10 more discussions. Every reaction video added another layer of interpretation. And every silence from the people involved made the noise even louder. Because now, the story wasn't just about what was shown in the footage anymore. It was about what people believed it meant. And that shift changed everything. Some viewers were focused purely on the documentary itself, analyzing scenes, replaying moments, trying to understand the intention behind each cut. Others, however, were focused on something deeper and more uncomfortable, the feeling that they were watching something never meant for them in the first place. That single thought turned curiosity into controversy, and controversy into division. On one side, there were people defending the release, saying that truth, no matter how uncomfortable, deserves to be seen. They argued that if the footage exists, it should be public, and that hiding reality only protects narratives that were never fully honest to begin with. But on the other side, the pushback grew stronger with every passing hour. "This isn't exposure anymore," one viral comment read. "This is exploitation." Another said, "A family is being turned into content. That's not entertainment, that's a violation." And those reactions weren't just random opinions anymore. They were shaping the direction of the entire conversation online. Because once the emotional tone of the audience shifts, the narrative stops being controlled by the content itself and starts being controlled by reaction. That's when things got even more complicated. Industry voices began to enter the discussion, not through official statements, but through subtle posts, live stream comments, and indirect messages that carried more weight than they appeared to at first glance. One artist went live and didn't hold back. "I don't care how it's being packaged," he said. "There's a line and it feels like it's being crossed." Within hours, another figure responded online with a completely different perspective. "If it's real life, then why are y'all shocked when it looks real?" they wrote. "Truth doesn't come with comfort." And just like that, the industry split wide open. Not into two sides of right and wrong, but into two completely different philosophies about storytelling, privacy, and exposure. Meanwhile, the silence from the central figures only intensified everything. No full statements, no clarifications, no direct responses that could settle the growing chaos. And in situations like this, silence doesn't calm the storm. It fuels it. Because when there's no official explanation, the internet fills in the gaps itself. Theories begin forming, timelines get reconstructed, intentions get assumed, and every missing detail becomes evidence in someone's interpretation of the truth. Then came another turning point. While the debate was still escalating, new clips from the documentary started surfacing again. But this time, viewers said the tone felt different, more intense, more emotionally loaded, less like passive storytelling and more like curated tension. And that's when a new wave of suspicion emerged. Was this footage being released to inform the audience or to provoke them? Was it documenting reality or shaping perception of reality? Those questions spread faster than the clips themselves. Because once people start questioning intent, they stop trusting context. And once context is gone, everything becomes open to interpretation. That's when attention shifted again, this time toward the emotional center of the situation. T's wife. According to circulating reports and online claims, her reaction to the footage wasn't just emotional, it was overwhelming. Not in a public, controlled way, but in a private breakdown that allegedly reflected the weight of everything being brought back into the spotlight. People close to the situation described it as a moment where everything collided at once. Memories, public attention, and personal history, all resurfacing under an uncontrollable spotlight. And while nothing official confirmed the details, the narrative had already taken hold. Because in moments like this, perception often becomes reality faster than facts can catch up. What made it even more intense was how quickly the footage itself became tied to older conversations, past rumors, previous controversies, moments that were NCE dismissed or forgotten, were suddenly being replayed in a new context, giving them new meaning in the eyes of the public. And that's when things became unstable. Because history, once reactivated, never stays in the past. It starts influencing the present. As the discussion deepened, another layer began forming around the situation. Questions about editing, selection, and control. Viewers started pointing out inconsistencies. Some clips felt incomplete, others seemed abruptly cut. Certain moments appeared to lead into something that was no longer shown. And that raised a disturbing possibility. What if the version of events being widely shared wasn't complete? What if what people were reacting to was only a fragment of a much larger story? That idea changed how people engaged with every new clip. Now nothing was just being watched. Everything was being analyzed. Every second of footage became a puzzle piece. Every silence between scenes became suspicious. Every edit became intentional in the eyes of the audience. And the deeper people went, the less certain anything became. Behind the scenes, according to unverified claims, tension was also rising among those connected to the situation. Conversations allegedly started shifting toward control, reputation management, and long-term impact. Because once something reaches this level of visibility, it stops being just content. It becomes a crisis of narrative. And narratives, once public, are extremely difficult to contain. Meanwhile, the emotional core of the situation remained unchanged. A family caught in the center of a story they did not fully control, watching parts of their private life being interpreted, replayed, and debated by millions of strangers. And that kind of exposure doesn't just create controversy. It creates exhaustion. Mental, emotional, personal. The kind that builds silently, while the internet continues to move loudly. Then came the final escalation. A new claim began circulating late at night suggesting that more footage exists, additional material that has not yet been released to the public, clips that could either clarify the situation or intensify it even further. No one knows if it's real, but the idea alone was enough to reignite everything. Because if there is more context waiting to be shown, then everything being debated right now could shift again overnight. And that uncertainty is what's keeping the entire situation alive. Not confirmation, not clarity, but anticipation. The sense that something bigger is still coming. And that's where everything stands now. Between truth and interpretation, between exposure and privacy, between storytelling and consequence. And as long as unanswered questions remain, the conversation won't slow down. It will only keep building until the next release changes everything again. Impact designed to trigger conversation, emotion, and above all, reaction. Now, nothing about that is officially confirmed, but the reason people are paying attention is because of how everything has unfolded so far. The timing, the rollout, the way certain clips instantly go viral while others barely get any attention at all. It's creating a pattern people can't ignore. And once people start seeing a pattern, they stop believing in coincidence. They start believing in intention. Because think about it, the footage drops, social media explodes, reactions split instantly, and within hours, the entire narrative becomes emotionally charged. Not slowly, not naturally, but all at once, like something was designed to hit maximum impact from the very beginning. And that's exactly what people are now questioning. Was this documentary simply showing reality? Or was it structured in a way to create a reaction to reality? That single question has completely changed how the internet is engaging with everything. Because now every clip isn't just being watched, it's being examined. Every moment isn't just being discussed, it's being dissected. People are replaying seconds, freezing frames, comparing reactions, and trying to figure out what was included, and more importantly, what wasn't. And once that level of scrutiny begins, nothing feels neutral anymore. Everything starts to feel intentional. Meanwhile, the emotional center of the situation continues to be T's wife. According to circulating claims and unverified insider discussions, her reaction wasn't just about what went viral publicly. It may have been triggered by something deeper, something connected to context that hasn't fully been shown yet. That idea alone has intensified everything, because it introduces a possibility people weren't ready for. What if the most emotional reactions we're seeing are only connected to part of the story? What if there are additional scenes, moments, or sequences that haven't been released yet, but are already shaping how the people involved are reacting behind the scenes? If true, that would mean the public isn't responding to the full picture. Ray responding to fragments. And fragments can change meaning depending on what surrounds them. That's why the conversation online keeps shifting. One moment it's outrage, the next it's sympathy, then it turns into skepticism, then it becomes debate again. There is no stable interpretation because there is no complete context. And in that kind of environment, perception becomes more powerful than fact. But the situation doesn't stop there. Because as the footage continues circulating, another layer has emerged, one that's making things even more complicated. Some viewers are now questioning the editing structure itself, not just what was shown, but how it was arranged. People are pointing out abrupt cuts, missing transitions, and moments where conversations feel like they begin mid-flow or end too suddenly. That has led to a growing theory online, that the footage may have been curated in a way that emphasizes certain emotional peaks while leaving out stabilizing context. In simpler terms, viewers believe they might be seeing the most intense version of events, not the most complete one. And whether that's true or not, the perception alone is enough to shift how people interpret everything. Because once editing becomes part of the conversation, trust in the footage starts to weaken. And once trust weakens, interpretation takes over completely. At the same time, behind the scenes, subtle changes are being noticed. People connected to the situation, public figures, collaborators, associates, have started becoming noticeably quieter. Some have deleted posts, others have stopped interacting publicly, and a few have distanced themselves entirely without explanation. In celebrity culture, silence like that doesn't go unnoticed. It gets interpreted immediately. As caution, as pressure, as tension building behind closed doors. And the more silence there is, the louder the speculation becomes. Then came another turning point. A viral claim began circulating online suggesting that additional footage exists, material that hasn't been released yet. According to the post, what the public has already seen is only a portion of the full documentary. No evidence was provided. No official confirmation followed. But it didn't matter, because the message itself was enough to shift the entire mood online. What you've seen isn't even the full part. That single idea changed everything. Now the internet isn't just reacting to what has been released. It's waiting for what might come next. And that anticipation is creating a different kind of tension, one built not on certainty, but on expectation. Because if there truly is more footage, then everything currently being debated could change overnight. A new clip could reframe previous moments. A missing scene could explain emotional reactions differently. Or an unreleased sequence could completely overturn the narrative people have already built in their minds. And that uncertainty is exactly what's making this situation feel unstable. Not because of what's been shown, but because of what might still be hidden. As discussions continue escalating, another perspective has started gaining attention from industry voices. Some commentators are now stepping into the conversation indirectly, suggesting that modern documentaries, especially those tied to high-profile figures, often operate on a balance between storytelling and emotional engagement. One comment that went viral put it like this: "People think they're watching reality, but they're often watching a constructed version of reality designed for impact." Another added, "Editing doesn't just show you what happened, it decides how you feel about what happened." Those statements hit a nerve online because they introduced a broader concern, not just about this specific situation, but about how narratives in general are shaped in the digital age. Because if emotion can be guided through editing, then perception becomes something that can be influenced, not just observed. And that realization is what's making this situation feel bigger than a single documentary. It's turning into a conversation about trust, media, and interpretation itself. Meanwhile, the pressure surrounding T and his family continues to grow. Fans are divided. Commentary is non-stop. Theories are multiplying. And every new post adds another layer of complexity to a story that already feels overloaded. Some people believe the footage is exposing something real that needed to be seen. Others believe it's crossing a boundary that should never have been approached in the first place. And neither side is backing down. Because at this point, the debate is no longer just about the footage. It's about ethics. It's about privacy. It's about where the line between public interest and personal life actually exists. And that line right now feels unclear. But the most unsettling part of all of this is what comes next. Because according to the latest circulating whispers, more content may still be on the way. Additional scenes, extended versions, missing context, material that could either validate what people believe or completely overturn it. And if that happens, the situation won't just continue. It will escalate again instantly. Because every new piece of footage doesn't just add to the story. It rewrites it. And right now, the entire internet is waiting at that edge, between what has already been revealed and what is still about to drop. Not knowing which direction it will go. Only knowing that it isn't finished yet. If that claim is even partially true, then what we're looking at isn't just a documentary unfolding in real time. It's something far more calculated. Because now the biggest question is what was shown anymore. It's why it was shown like this. And that changes everything. At this point, the emotional reaction we're seeing online, shock, anger, sympathy, debate, might not just be a natural response. Some are now suggesting it could have been anticipated, maybe even expected from the very beginning. Let that settle for a second. Because if the reaction was predictable, then the situation stops looking like a simple release of footage and starts looking like something structured, something designed, something that plays out in stages, where each stage creates a stronger response than the last. And that leads to one uncomfortable question. Who actually benefits from all of this attention? Because whenever something dominates the internet like this, when it spreads this fast, gets this emotional, and splits public opinion so sharply, there is always some kind of outcome, some kind of shift happening underneath the surface. But right now, nobody can clearly define what that shift is. Meanwhile, the silence from the people directly involved is making everything even heavier. T hasn't made a clear public response. His wife remains at the emotional center of the conversation, but hasn't spoken publicly. And the internet, it's stuck in constant motion, debating, analyzing, arguing, rewatching, reinterpreting every frame like it holds a missing piece of the truth. But here's what makes this situation feel different. Every hour that passes doesn't settle the conversation. It intensifies it. More opinions, more theories, more speculation, and with that, more pressure building toward a breaking point where someone will eventually have to speak. Because silence can't hold forever. At some point, a statement will come, or another clip will drop, or something new will surface that forces the entire narrative to shift again. And when that happens, it won't just add to the story. It will reshape it. Because if there really is more footage, if more context exists that hasn't been seen yet, then what the public is reacting to right now might only be a fragment, a partial view of something much larger and more complicated. And that idea alone is what's keeping everyone locked in. Not clarity, uncertainty, the feeling that the full picture is still somewhere out there, waiting to be revealed. But until that moment arrives, everything exists in interpretation. Nothing is fully confirmed. Everything is debated, and every new detail has the power to completely change the direction of the conversation. That's why this situation feels like it's sitting right on the edge of something bigger. Because the next release, whatever it is, won't just continue the story. It could either settle it or completely blow it open again. And nobody knows which direction it's going to take. So now the real question becomes simple. Are we actually watching the truth unfold in real time? Or are we watching a carefully structured version of events designed to provoke a specific reaction from the world? Because at this point, the line between reality and narrative doesn't feel as clear anymore. And whatever happens next is going to decide which one it really is.